Okay, can I just get a bit more water?
Yes. Hello, everyone. This is Patrick from Outrageous Impact here for a second time today with Beccie D'Cunha. Hello, Beccie. How are you?
Hi, I'm well, thank you.
Excellent. I'm really excited to have you here. It's fantastic. I've had a complete day from hell in the shed. So everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. I've had what bankers call a fat finger error, where you press a button and you lose $100 trillion in a financial transaction. I actually just sort of started the live stream prematurely. I broke my bike. Our son wouldn't go to sleep. There was a number of issues in terms of digestive issues for him. Let's not go into that. There's been all sorts of things going on. So I'm absolutely delighted that Beccie is here to introduce some sort of sanity to what's going on. So Beccie, great to have you here. I wonder if you could just start by introducing yourself and either look at me or look at the camera. But
I wasn't sure which to go for.
Yeah.
I'll look at you for now. So I'm Beccie. I work as an organisational consultant. So my specialism is in mediation and helping managers and leaders to build healthy cultures. So I've led a couple of charities before and a small business. And I'm passionate about building kind of healthy, positive cultures in organisations.
Fantastic. And today we're going to be talking about questions and how to answer and ask better questions. And I think we both agreed this has got the potential to become a very meta discussion, because it's going to be like posing questions about questions. So if it gets too much, please just say something here in the comments. I don't know if anyone is actually here, but it says there are two people. I don't know if I can actually see who that is, but I'm just relieved that so far there hasn't been a jackhammer going. There hasn't been like a cat trying to break in. Something hasn't fallen off the wall, Theresa May style. I haven't had to do some dancing. So I wonder if you could just start off, because I think mediation is one of those words that people may well have heard but don't really know what it is. So could you tell us a little bit about what it is and how and what it means to you?
Yeah. So mediation, in essence, is about helping people to resolve conflict or disputes. It's an informal process. So in an organisational setting, it sits outside of formal processes and procedures. And it's all about helping people to talk to each other. It's all about good facilitation, helping 2 or 3 or even teams of people to talk and listen to each other to resolve their conflict and find a win-win outcome. So it's very powerful because it's a safe setting to talk about difficult issues, basically, as opposed to more adversarial processes or grievances or disciplinaries. And it's safe, it's informal, and it's confidential, and it leads to win-win outcomes.
Brilliant. And I imagine that, doing that sort of work must place quite a lot of demands on the mediator, because in some ways I would imagine you'd have to almost be skilled and expert enough to guide people through a difficult process, but also be an empty vessel, so that you're not kind of putting your own sort of preconceptions into a situation.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. You need to have, I suppose the expertise is very much in process and in creating safe spaces, so being expert facilitators and experts in terms of helping people to navigate emotional kind of conversations, but rather than being experts in the actual issue. So you don't need to be, it's not like being a lawyer where you need to be an expert in the content of the dispute. The content will be new to you, but you help the parties to navigate their way through it through a good process and a safe environment.
Brilliant. So this is quite a weird question, but I wonder what to you you would say in terms of why questions actually matter.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the
jackhammer's just started up, people, by the way. This is absolutely wicked. So the cat is mewing outside the door and the jackhammer has started. So I just wanted to make that absolutely crystal clear for anyone who's actually wondering. And hello Cecile. Nice to see you.
So the question was, why do questions matter? I think if we didn't ask questions, we'd stagnate. We wouldn't grow, we wouldn't innovate, we wouldn't learn. So I think they matter because they stretch us. If we ask questions of ourselves, which I try to do a lot and reflect a lot after projects or challenges I've worked through. If we don't ask questions of ourselves, or if we don't ask questions of our teams or our colleagues, then we won't be able to innovate, and we won't get to the kind of heart of problems or to find good solutions.
That's really fascinating. And I guess then building on that, I mean, what do you think actually makes a sort of a good question, and what actually makes a great question? And is there a difference between the two?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time it's about intention rather than about whether the question is a polished question or not. I think people sense that if the intention is a good one. And I was thinking about this, and I think for me, I've come up with kind of the 3 C's, which I think a lot of people have 3 C's. I think it's helpful. So I think a good question takes courage, firstly. So I think it's courage to ask the difficult questions. So to be brave, courageous enough to go where a lot of people don't go. A lot of managers don't ask difficult questions. A lot of less mediators do, but a lot of others don't. So it's asking the questions that might provoke difficult feedback or emotional response, but being brave enough to ask those, courageous enough. So the second C is being curious, so curiosity. So being genuinely open, asking a question that isn't prejudging or guessing what the outcome will be or the answer will be. It's not leading, it's genuinely curious about the other person. So I always think about suspending your judgment, like pressing pause on a CD player. We can't not judge, but we can try and switch off that judgment for a moment, or press pause on it and just focus on that other person and what could be going on for them, and try not to judge. And then the third C is compassion. I think the other 2 are meaningless if I think people sense it, if we're not asking out of a genuine kind of concern and compassion for that other person. So asking empathic questions that are about impact, feelings, needs, can help to really get under the surface. And you could go on with the C's because there's lots of great C words, but I do think the courage, the compassion, and the curiosity leads to greater connection and greater creativity. It means you build connections, you build relationships, and you build creative solutions through that.
That's a lovely way of thinking about it, and I definitely one I'm going to bear in mind in terms of my research work. So just really fascinating, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because I do think there's a lot of sort of some learnings and experience that one can get when one is trying to understand people, irrespective of whether it's to manage and resolve a complaint, or actually to understand why people are acting in certain ways. Yeah,
and I think that's crucial. Even that understanding why, I think, is crucial as well. And I think why questions are the most powerful questions we can ask as a manager or a leader or a business charity leader. Or that's the cat.
The cat is really meowing.
That's another C.
The cat, the 6th C. It's like we should write a business book about it. The 6th C. Beccie D'Cunha and Patrick Olszewski. Basically, the 6th C. It's the cat. Spoiler alert. It's the cat. Le chat in French. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So asking why questions, being brave enough to really go under the surface, drill down, and ask, why is it that was so difficult, or why is that so important to you, or why do you care about that? Why is that a problem? Really interrogate the problem in a kind of non-judgmental, compassionate way, and that will get to the root cause of the problem. And that's what mediation is about as well.
Thank you so much. So why do you think people actually find it hard to ask questions, and why do you think people find it hard to listen, Beccie?
I think it's fear. I think it's probably quite a natural fear of the unknown, like not knowing what somebody's going to say. And I think it's fear of it getting difficult and feeling kind of maybe people haven't got the time for the answer if it's difficult, or they haven't got the skills to then manage the emotional fallout or whatever it is. But I think it's really sad. I've always been struck at, both as a consultant as being a manager or a leader myself, how few managers ask lots of questions. And I think that the managers that build the healthiest teams do ask questions like, what do you need from me as a manager? What is it? Is there anything I've done that's bugged you this week? What can I do that will improve our working relationship? How are you really doing? Is that, what are you finding difficult? All of those questions that I think people don't ask, and they often don't do it of colleagues as well that are going through difficult times. And actually, in not doing it, we're not uncovering the problems. We're just kind of letting them fester, and it will come back to kind of hit us later. I think the reason people don't ask because they don't feel confident or skilled, I guess, and they're fearful. And probably fearful of hurting or offending the other person too. but most people long to be asked, I think.
Yeah. And having like that really clear sort of exchange of expectations as well, I think is absolutely critical in most good relationships, isn't it? Because actually you're saying, I need this, I expect this of you.
Yeah.
And actually, if those things are unsaid, it can be extremely damaging.
Definitely. And it it's damaging, and it kind of festers, but can make a culture of an organization quite toxic. And I think there's also something about modeling. I think leaders and managers should model that that openness to feedback, asking questions, modeling a kind of desire to grow and learn and improve.
So what do you think? I sort of kind of want to let the cat in, but I'm worried that if I sit here stroking the cat, it's going to look too bonding. So if anyone would like to ask a question about the cat, the jackhammering, or anything else that's that Beccie has already said, please just type it into the chat stream. And hello, Dawn, as well. Lovely to see you. So what do you think mediation can actually teach us about asking better questions?
I think mediators, it's quite counterintuitive what mediators do, and most people are quite scared of mediation, I think, for that reason, because mediators they go towards the difficult things, whereas most people, I think, flee from them. So mediators, I kind of think of it as moving towards the fire. Like it's gonna hurt, but it's gonna be difficult for the parties to a mediation to talk about the most difficult things. But if they don't do it, they're not going to learn. They're not going to grow their relationship. The issues aren't going to be resolved fully, and it's going to be too cheap a resolution in some ways. So mediators ask those difficult questions. They keep asking why. They drill down underneath the surface, and they do it in a safe way, in a very nurturing way. But it's challenging. So I think it's asking those questions, but it's also mediators. I think questions are the probably most important tool of the mediator in our kind of toolkit, and I think though all of the questions are very applicable, I think, to people who are managing people or leading organizations, as I've done as well. And I think so it's asking questions that can kind of see problems in a different way. So it's mediators ask a lot of reframing questions. So it's questions that for instance, if someone's saying if someone says something like, I could never work with that person again, it's asking a question that opens up possibilities. So what if you were to imagine that you did have to keep working with them, what would make that possible? What would you need to hear, or what would they need to do to be able to work with them again? Or it's kind of asking a question that flips the problem around and reframes it.
That must be extremely painful and frightening for people when you actually pose that question. You know, if there's been a real breakdown of trust and I've certainly had toxic relationships at work, and the prospect of thinking that I would have to do anything other than just flee from the situation, particularly in my earlier career, really, really painful. And how do you sort of support people through that sort of difficulty? I guess that's part of the experience, but I'm interested to know how you sort of, although you're moving towards it and are relatively, well, not totally uncomfortable with it, how do you support other people to do that?
I think the crucial thing is really listening and meeting them where they're at. So I think the worst thing that people can do, and sometimes people do it when they're inexperienced as a mediator, is they try and quickly flip to the positives and see the possibilities when the party is still stuck in the past and the pain of what they're going through. So for me, the first thing you have to do is to listen to what the reality is now and empathize with that, understand the impact, understand why they're angry, why they're upset, what went wrong, before then, when they're then ready and they feel like they've explored that with the person, they feel heard by the other person, then it's amazing in the mediation process. It's like magic. Something suddenly switches, like you flip a switch, and suddenly they're able to look to the future and to start problem solving. And people can't.
I'm sort of just. Let's just have this. Let's
let Maisie in.
Come on, Daisy Cat. Come on. Come here. Right, here she is. She's just determined to get on the live stream. Sorry, Beccie. Hello, Maisie Cat. Okay, right. I mean, you can stroke the cat if you want.
Why not?
Go on, you can have the cat. Okay, Beccie's got the cat. That's excellent. So now I'm not going to look like a Bond villain.
So funny.
So I mean, just building on what you said then, Beccie. I mean, one of the sort of final things I'd just like to explore in our last couple of minutes together really is about how people can listen better, because it sounds like listening is an absolutely critical tool in actually building effective and sort of, you know, bubbly relationships again. What sort of tips could you offer people about how to actually listen better?
So I think that for me, the most important one probably is summarizing. So I think if you're talking about something difficult with someone, as a manager in particular, to listen, to ask questions, listen to what they say, but don't keep firing questions at them, because it's going to feel like an interrogation rather than a kind of an open, relaxing or nurturing conversation. So punctuate if you're hearing something quite profound, punctuate that series of questions with summaries, little summaries that are empathic, that say what the party said in their own, or person said in their own words. So for instance, it would be, so you're saying that was what was particularly difficult about that situation was that he raised his voice at you and you felt quite small in that moment. What you would have liked is for him to have talked to you more calmly, etc., etc. So I think it's summaries slow it down, and they help the person to really feel listened to, because you could be listening, but we have to show we're listening. We have to, and we can do that best, I think, through summarising. And I think the second thing I'd say, and it links back to the other question about what we can learn from cat hair in my eye, sorry. What we can learn
this
from...
was an occupational hazard I had not prepared for on my risk assessment. This is very bad.
What we can learn from... No, that's fine. What we can learn from mediators... No, that's fine, thanks. What we can learn from mediators in terms of questions, I think it's about trusting that. So mediation's quite radical in that it genuinely believes that parties to a conflict, no matter what state they're in and how bad the conflict is, it genuinely believes that they hold the answers to the conflict, and they can get there with the help of a good facilitator and a safe space. So I think, I think it goes the same for managers on the whole, that in a team, if we ask the right questions, that we can help people to find the solutions themselves. So rather than solving it for somebody, whether it's a performance issue or a behavioural issue or a conflict, asking the questions that help people to find their own solutions. So it empowers them, it leads them to reflect, to grow in self-awareness.
So you're almost like a sort of archaeologist, sort of dusting off the dirt, because they've already got the answers internally, rather than actually sort of filling up their head with new stuff. And I mean, that's quite a well-known concept, you know, in terms of education, but I just never heard it sort of talked about in terms of mediation. So it's fascinating to me to hear that. I think it might be Paulo Freire, like Pedagogy of the Oppressed. I'll find out about it. I'll put it in the link. But I think it's interesting to me that there seems like there's a similarity in terms of those sorts of approaches and whatever. Yeah,
it's really similar to a lot of educational kind of thinking and practice, definitely, because it is about good facilitation, how to enable learning. And in some ways, mediation, that's what I believe that's what good mediation is about, because the parties are learning about themselves and about each other. And what's wonderful, I was mediating this week, and what's wonderful about a good mediation process is that by the end of it, not only have the parties resolved their differences, but they've learned new ways to communicate. They've seen that being open and honest can help and can work, and that listening works, and they found new strategies that they can then take back to their team and to their workplaces. So, but yeah, it is about kind of uncovering, as you say, like an archaeologist would. It's uncovering, creating the conditions to uncover the gems that everyone kind of has.
Oh, it's been an absolutely fascinating conversation. Thanks very much to Cecile and Dawn for joining us live, despite my fantastically inept sort of technological prowess at the beginning. Beccie, for people who want to find out more about you, or who actually may want to bring a mediator into a workplace situation, where do they go? How do they find out about you? And how, just sort of briefly, do people tend to sort of engage you? So it's really just to sort of hear a little bit about how people would actually work with a mediator, because I'm assuming it's something that not very many people have done before. So it'd just be great to hear, what that is, and then we'll finish up. Yeah,
well, in terms of how to kind of engage me, or what I might be able to offer, it could be anything from two people where there is a relationship breakdown coming in. It usually takes a day to mediate, to meet the parties individually and then bring them together in the afternoon and then by the end of the day they would typically have a written agreement and the conflict's resolved, through to a whole team conflicts that could take a little bit longer, a couple of days potentially, where I'd facilitate kind of dialogue between that team. And then I'd also encourage organisations, I guess, to think about training for managers and leaders in how to nip conflicts in the bud, how to mediate on a day-to-day basis, like mini mediations, just use the skills so that things don't escalate and so that the teams are empowered and effective and happy. Or I'm always happy to offer a bit of a health check. I'd love to, if anyone wants to just meet over a coffee and to talk through, I do conflict coaching as well. So if anyone wants to just talk through a conflict and how to manage it, then really happy to offer that. And in terms of finding me, you can find me on LinkedIn. So I'm Beccie D'Cunha. I guess you can kind of post that.
I will definitely put the link up there.
Because both of my names are a nightmare to spell. But it's BECCIE D''CUNHA. And on there you can find a link to my website, which is D'Cunha Vincent Consulting. But you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and that would be lovely. I'm based here in Brighton, but I do travel around as needed too.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Beccie. Honestly, I've really been looking forward to this conversation. I feel like I've learned a huge amount. It's been really, really lovely to be able to sort of interview somebody who's both a friend, but also who's, obviously so skilled at what she does. So it's absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for making the time. Thank you all for joining. And Cecile says, thank you very much. Really interesting. Cheers, Cecile. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
And we'll be sharing this via all the usual social media and on Outrageous Impact. So just to say thank you very, very much for coming. Beccie, thanks again. And
thanks for listening.
cheerio. Bye-bye.